Hello everyone, episode 5. It is December 30th and you're listening to There's Treasure Inside Edition. And joining me is Max. How you doing, Max?
Doing great. How are you, Chaz?
I'm doing good. And again, we have joining us the management. How you doing, management?
Hey, I'm doing great. Happy to be back.
Yeah,
Welcome
it's been
back.
good. Okay, well, this week, from what I saw, there's plenty of new theories that we're going to review, and we're going to talk about some of them this week. No particular solves where someone says they've solved it all, but just little tidbits. People are starting to figure out little things of where to start, so I'm going to go through that. One of the other things that I noticed this week was a lot of people are getting very frustrated. Like I'm starting to see the cracks starting to form. So this hunt has been out for what, a month and a half, 2 months now. It seems like some people are hitting a wall. Like it's getting too much for some people. They're getting irritated. My advice for that would be if you're doing this and you're not having fun with it, you should probably stop for a while. It's the type of thing I've done this myself with this hunt where you do it for a while, you keep going, and it's hard to stop researching it. But if you're at that point where you're not enjoying it, you're probably going to get burnt out and not want to do the whole thing. So my advice would be keep doing it if you enjoy doing it. If you're not enjoying it, stop for a while because this is going to go on for a long time. So we have to
Chaz,
talk about a long term.
that's very smart strategy. You wanna make the competition less, huh?
That's right. So anyone who's hunting for the treasure, just stop trying, basically, for at least maybe a year. So I
It's
have a
not gonna.
chance.
You know how frustrated I am. I know your trick. It's not gonna work with me.
Yeah. What
A
do you think,
hundred
management? You
thousand
say
books just got out. 100,000 books just got out. So let's just put everybody on pause until the springtime.
correct. But what do you think about that? Like, I think, do you also agree when you're frustrated and you're not having fun, you're maybe not thinking clearly, and you're also at risk of maybe just stopping the whole thing?
Absolutely. I freaked out earlier because I was staring at my ebook on my computer screen and then I was trying to figure out what something was, and it turns out it was just some schmutz on my computer screen.
Here's my advice. I would probably say go to a different one. You have 5 options, right? So that's what I did. I got really frustrated with one, and I can easily go to another one to clear my head.
Yes, that would make sense to change it up on the different hunts, right? And there's other hunts around as well. In fact, a friend of the show, Froggy, has launched his Esther's Quest hunt yesterday, so you might want to look into that one as well. But let's get into the news of the week. Okay, so there's a new interview that came out this week, and Jon Collins-Black did an interview with Sports Card Madness, and the title of the YouTube video is "This Guy Hid $2 million in treasures and sports cards all over the US." And it's a really good interview. I think you should go check it out. There's a few things that came up from this interview that I wanted to talk about it. Did you guys see this interview as well?
Yeah,
Yep.
I would hope so, because I asked you to watch it for the show. But I'm going to
I
go
watched
through.
it twice. I get extra credit because I watched it twice.
Good. Okay. Well, there's a few things I wanted to go through. First of all, there's one phrase that he said in this interview that he said in other interviews, and he says it almost word for word, and he also says it in the book as well. And he said, "There's no grand cipher only a genius could figure out." And he said, "No grand cipher. You don't have to be a genius." And he keeps saying that word over and over. I'm not sure whether he's just, got that phrase in his head, so he keeps saying it, or whether he's actually dropping a clue. Because in the book, in the past and future box, he mentions there too again, you don't have to be a genius to figure it out. So I feel like he could be dropping hints in the interviews, which would be awesome. That'd be really epic. Another word he uses in the book as well. But if he was actually dropping hints in interviews and you could go back later and see them, the hints being in the interviews, I think that'd be really cool. What do you guys think about that phrase?
I hang on to the details of that phrase. No grand cipher. Okay, it doesn't say there's no cipher. It's just not something wildly complicated.
I think he doesn't want to alienate people, right? He doesn't want someone who think, hey, I'm not good in math or I'm not good in a certain subject. I'm not going to be able to do this. So he's saying, look, and I don't want to make him look bad, but I think he's saying your IQ doesn't matter. You'll have fun. Anyone can figure this out. It's a few things you put together and anyone can solve it.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, I think, from like having a broader reach. That general sentiment would make sense. It's just that he keeps using the same words over and over. No grand cipher. Only a genius could figure out. So I thought that was a bit strange. But he did mention as well that I picked up on that, and when I thought back to the puzzles, I thought this makes sense. He made different puzzles for different brains and personalities. And we actually talked about this on the show, I think it was last week or the week before, how each one is slightly different. You've got the past and future box is the one that's very logical and maybe ciphers, but the word search and the cryptograms, right? So the very logical engineering type brain people would like that one, or people who do crosswords, things like that, right? Then you've got the Forest Fen Hunt, which is like a poem. So people who are into literature and words and play on words, that's one's for them. Then you've got the Appalachian Trail box, which is just a map, basically. So people who are very visual, who want to see things that way. And then you've got the Pokemon one, which is more of a story that you can tease apart. It made sense to me, and I thought that was a really cool way that he's done that. That he's kind of set it up for different types of people will gravitate to different puzzles, and they have a better chance of solving something and enjoying it as well if it's in the style at which they think.
That makes sense. Because yeah, we did kind of touch on this, right? We kind of mentioned it on the previous possible clue you mentioned. I don't think it's going to be something that a genius can just look at it and decode it, right? You have to put in some effort also. And yeah, a few different models, a few different structures of hunts to, again, expand his reach, right? Smart.
Yeah, and he even said in a different interview that he's not going to release any hints for 8 years. He wasn't like 2 or 3 years. He was like, nah, maybe I'll release a hint in 8 years. So pretty confident that this isn't going to get solved quickly.
And I think he said it on this one too, right, Chaz? He touched on it where he said, maybe, by 10 years, if someone hasn't figured it out, I can always give a clue. But
He
I kind
did.
of got another little thing that I'll touch on that I read that, we kind of touched on it on hunts also that we worked on. And it's, what if someone randomly finds this hunt and just doesn't care to announce it, or just, someone finds it and walks away happy?
Oh, you mean like without even buying the book? They just found this box?
Exactly. Yeah. Someone randomly, could be an excavator, construction worker, could be some landscaper, someone just or some random hiker just finds something and says, "Cool," takes it, finds out, oh, Jon Collins, but I don't want to be known. I'm a private person, and Jon. The other thing that it raised was, how would Jon know, right? Did he put a tracker in it? Is there webcams around? Probably not. Did he think about that? Did he decide not to do it, or did he do it?
Well, he mentioned there was incentives if to
Mm.
contact him. So
Someone did mention that. Yeah, someone did mention that.
it's entirely possible that people don't. It's entirely possible they don't contact him and no one knows it's been solved, or no one knows who solved it, which would be maddening, I think. I think
For
people would
tax
go crazy.
purposes, would you?
I don't think I'm going to discuss my tax strategy on the
No,
podcast.
but technically, right? If someone did not want to, if someone found $2 million, or a million, or half a million, or 100 grand, for tax purposes, how many people do you think would announce it?
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. I thought for sure most people would get the extra money, the incentive, but if taxes came into it, I don't know. Not that we're
What if the
encouraging evading
incentive
taxes on the podcast.
what if the incentive was that he paid the taxes? Like
That is
what else could the
True.
incentive be?
that is
I think,
entirely
and he could
possible.
put that out there too later on. That's what he also mentioned in this interview, that, if something comes up, there's room for me. But what if, God forbid, something happens to him? Then the whole thing is going to be a real mess.
I think a lot of the troubleshooting around the details and specifics of that was resolved with the forest fin hunt, because I think everybody kind of went down that rabbit hole. So he was a forest fin hunter, and I know
True.
all the people that were hunting that were really looking into the legality and specifics. So he probably did his due diligence on that to make sure that everything was buttoned up for the scenarios that they at least imagined during that hunt.
I would think
Yeah,
so. I think he seems very complete in the planning of this since it took so long. Another thing I thought that was very interesting was when someone asked him, how would you go about finding the treasure? When the interviewer asked that very broad question, right? He said the whole arc of the story is around the treasures themselves and the stories behind the treasures. But he said something very specific that really the title of the chapters, the kind of the inscription that's on them, is a clue on how to find it. And really, there's only a couple words on each chapter. So, for example, chapter 8 says, know the past, see the future, which sounds like the past and future box. Chapter 9 says confirmation bias. So there's only like a couple of words for each chapter. And I have not really heard anyone break this down of the descriptions of each of these chapters being clues for the entire thing, or even clues for the mini ones as well, the mini boxes. I think that's something we should be looking at is what are those, small amounts of words and how can we look into those words to have double meanings or point towards something else of how to find the treasure?
And another thing that I noticed was after the 4 boxes, it goes into additional treasure items. Why weren't those included with the rest? Why have a whole separate different chapter in the back? Why separate them out? So maybe there's something along the lines of what you're saying with the little anecdotes with the chapter names and the table of contents. Maybe there's something else with those treasure items as well.
So Chaz, you said the title kind of gives you, maybe the title is like a map, the very basic map. But yeah, that's interesting. I'd never looked at the titles as being a precursor to the hunt, if you would.
Yeah, so I thought with the treasures at the very end of the book, my understanding was that maybe they just didn't have as great stories as some of the ones earlier that he wanted to talk about, but definitely could be the ones earlier have better clues to the treasure. But I just find it interesting that he's telling us this is how you find the treasure, and I've not heard anyone like that was his only answer was
I
this is how
missed
you
that.
find it, and I don't find anyone talking about it, which I found very interesting.
I completely missed it.
They're going to be talking about it now.
Yeah, thank you, Chaz.
Yeah. The other thing is he said it took 4 to 5 years making the clues, some old and some new. And actually, I'm going to go to another part of this that I thought was interesting as well. So he said he mentions that he had to go boots on the ground to find the perfect spot. So for some reason in my mind, I was thinking that he had already picked the location from his house based on the clues that he came up with. Like he thought of some clues or he found a place and built some clues around that. And then he flew to the location and just found like a nice rock to put it under or something like that. But he mentioned that he had to go boots on the ground several times to find the best spot of where to put it. And he went to very different locations around the US. And so I started to think about this. It's hard to conceive of what came first. Was it the clues, or was it the location, or was it a bit of both? So did he just find scenic spots around the US and say this is a really good spot and built the entire clue structure around that? Or did he come up with some clues and had to kind of fit locations to those clues, if it makes sense? So
No,
he's
no,
like I
yeah,
was
you're
saying,
right.
he spent 4 to 5 years making clues. I'm thinking those are the kind of structural things he came up with, and then some were very towards the end. So it makes me think that some of the clues he put were very like he thought of them a long time ago. They fit certain areas, and then once he got boots on the ground and found the exact location, he had to kind of sprinkle in a few extra clues to make it a little more precise.
No, you're right. You had me thinking because I've tried to stash something a few times, and you just relived like 2% of what I did, but the amount that he put into writing this book, he definitely had the locations in mind, at least the vicinity, and most of the treasure, right? Most of the hunt, the book had to have been written, but there had to have been some interchangeable details within the book that will lead you to the final spot because yeah, he had to probably change the location multiple times even after writing the book because of something. Like I literally, when I would go back to the place, saw a sign at one part. The second time I went to check on it, it wasn't really a spot I could hide something. So, and construction might have started in a year. So he has to put all of these things that it has to be an area that for the next 10, 20 years, he knows nothing's going to change there. So yeah, this is a wild point you just brought up. Got me thinking a
That's why
lot.
a lot of, sorry,
Go ahead.
that's why a lot of people think that the Appalachian Footpath Boxer is the reason that the book was delayed its release because it was originally supposed to be released in October and because of the hurricane and all of Western North Carolina getting washed away. But on page 201, it says, I could at best hope to narrow down a potential spot to 4 or 5 general locations per box before I came to a region. So he'd have 4 or 5 general locations picked out before he even went boots on the ground.
But it seems like for the word search, for example, it seems like he's got a few different layers to it. So it has to be very specific. So it seems strange to me that he would like only certain words would work, it feels like. So I thought he would have picked the clues and gone to that location. That location has to be it. But how would you like find a location and then try to wedge it back into a word search where everything fits together? I just find that very hard to do.
Well, you kind of answered it because again, right, there's multiple parts to each one of these. So what he did was 4 out of 5 parts are already written and thought of, and that last part, it's maybe a couple clues within a sentence or something, right? Some final descriptions to give you that last point. So he had to have done maybe 90% of the book and left certain slots, that last step in each treasure hunt open until he did it one at a time, right? So it took him a year and a half to do one, or some of them he might have done in 6 months. He wrote it, he went to the spot. Did he go multiple times to each one?
He may have. He
I
may have
would
been
think
like
he had to.
Yeah.
it might be iterative. Like he might have gone and then come up with a clue, then realize it didn't quite work, go back again, find another spot. So I think this
Or
is
he just traveled, right? He traveled for 5 years, and along the path, he was coming up, writing the book and stashing the things a
yeah, and the
third
thing is,
time,
I don't
maybe.
think we're going to be able to figure it out from that, but I think it's just interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting once it's solved for him to talk about how he created
Oh
it,
yeah.
had to match up the clues and the location, given how complex the whole thing is. I find it very fascinating. There's a few quick things I wanted to talk about that are just little tidbits that I thought were interesting. First of all, at one point he said Twitter, and then after a few seconds he said, "Oh, so I guess I should say X now." And I had actually started looking into X's on there being potentially referring to X, previously known as Twitter. But it appeared that he didn't even think of X being Twitter. So I'm thinking maybe that's a bad path to go down. If you see an X thinking that's relating to Twitter, I don't think it is based on him referring to it as Twitter, not X.
Well, I have to say that is probably one of the biggest rebrand fails ever because everybody says X or Twitter, formerly known as X.
Yes, still, it's been like a
So
year. And they're still
Or the
saying,
other way
unless
around.
yeah, I said it backwards. Everybody says X, formerly known as Twitter.
yes, like no one knows it still.
I think I remember that part of the interview, and it might have been accidental, I think. I don't remember it, but I don't remember it seeming like he was being mischievous about it. But it could be. I'll have to relook it,
No,
rewatch
that's
it.
what I'm saying. That I don't think he was being mischievous. I think it was a real reaction or a real
Okay.
statement. He was
Okay,
calling
good.
it Twitter, basically. And so if he had actually put in the box in the book, sorry, that X was a clue, and you go to x.com, right? He would have had it in his mind that it's called X, not Twitter, right? So when he called it Twitter, it made me think that X is not a clue in the book for going to x.com.
Hmm.
It's actually
Oh, yeah.
formerly known as Twitter, right? The other thing was the interviewer said he had one clue he thought was right, and he said the description you said of Michael Jordan seemed very interesting, and the reaction is just a split-second reaction, and those are the sorts of reactions that it's really hard to control. And so that reaction to me seemed really genuine that he'd hit on something. And so again, if you want to go check out the interview, you can check it out. But when he says something like, "You mentioned Michael Jordan's description," it's like probably half a second of a glance on his face that it looks like him thinking, "Yeah, you're onto something there." I saw that. Did you guys see that?
I
Yeah, he
did.
looks like a little mischievous kid.
Yeah, because if he didn't know what he was talking about, you think he'd be like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" But he was just like,
Yeah, it's what he said. Also, I think he said, "Oh, really?" And he gave that look you're talking about, or
"Yes,
something. He said, "Oh, really?" Or you think so? Basically, you think it's a clue.
yeah." I would love to hear again what the solution is to that one, the Michael Jordan part of it.
But
That was
but right after that was the real clue, I think, if
what
you
was
want
that?
to get into it. So right after that, he asked him something about because he asked him about a game or something, how he played, and he was wondering if that was a clue. And then he said, no, but he said in a very like childish, like very joyful way that there was a story about me playing a basketball game in there. But the interviewer just kind of didn't catch it and brushed off. But it looked like he was getting to something right then and there. It was right after the reaction you're talking
I
about.
remember that, yeah. I mean, there is a story about him. It's a really embarrassing story, actually, in the book, but he could have been referring to it as a potential clue as well. You never know.
Oh, I didn't know it was embarrassing then. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, his publicist might be standing in the background being like, no, 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 no.
Okay.
And one thing he mentioned too is, which again just found interesting, not that it will help us find it or anything, but he said he didn't leave any hints around the treasure. He didn't mark anything to say you're getting close or you're on the right track. I've been here. Literally, it's just the box and that's it. There's nothing around it to indicate that you're close or anything like that.
Actually, I'm very glad that he didn't carve up any of our public lands.
That's true. Another thing I thought was interesting that he said it's not buried. He's mentioned this before. He's mentioned this several times, and he looked a little frustrated that everyone keeps saying buried treasure. And he said multiple times it is not buried, and people keep saying it. He said it's like there's this word connection between treasure and the word buried. And it got me thinking of, okay, so it's not buried. So how is it actually hidden? I've not heard anyone really talk about this in detail because most of the time, if you're going to hide something, it's going to be buried, right? And he also said it's not in any man-made structure or anything. So I thought it'd be fun to think about how is it actually hidden? I mean, how can it be hidden? What do you think?
I think it's disguised. I mean, you have talked about this guy. You might not remember, but there's this geocacher, and he's also an artist. And what he'll do is he'll go to a city block, and he'll find a missing brick, and then that's where he'll hide his geocache, his treasure. And sometimes it gets elaborate. Like you will not know it's there because it's disguised behind art. He'll do some art with it. It's not just going to be, you're not going to know there's a treasure behind it, basically. So it's some kind of disguise within nature or within where he's hiding it. And he might end up touching it up, right? He might have to add a tree there or something, or some bushes or rocks or bricks.
I think it's
That's my
entirely
guess.
possible. I mean, he's got a lot of money in this hunt. I was thinking about this too. Do you really think he just threw it under some rocks? Or he just, wrapped it in a shopping bag or something like that? I doubt it, right? It's probably something a little more elaborate because it would have to be protected from the weather as well. Like these boxes are made of metal. And he's not just going to have them sitting out where it can be rained on and that sort of thing. So I was thinking the same lines as you that it's probably in my mind something like a fake rock that has two halves and is put together. And he mentioned at one point, I think in the book, or maybe it was in an interview, he said you should check every nook and cranny. And again, that didn't sound quite right to me because I thought, well, the boxes are really big. Why would you need to check every nook and cranny if they're that big? So it makes me think that there's like some sort of latch or something of a fake rock that's put together and you hit the latch and it opens up. And the other thing as well, when he said it would take so long to find the box, part of me is thinking it could be the riddles and the puzzles themselves. The other part is even if you're in the exact location, actually finding it amongst the fake rocks or whatever he's put it in could be a real challenge. It could take years as well.
Well, that scares me because I have a hide a key somewhere in my yard and I can't even find it, and I know it's there. So I'm probably never going to find the treasure if it's painted like a rock out in nature. I'm also thinking about all the early colonial fireplaces that are still freestanding in Appalachia where the house has fallen down, but the fireplace is still there, and then people pulling bricks out of those trying to find the treasure. So I hope that's not the case.
And yeah, I did hear about another treasure hunt where the treasure hunter had actually opened up a stump and put a hole in it and put the stump back together again and glued it back together, similar to what I was thinking with the rock. So
That's what I'm thinking too.
it could be
Something
something like
along
that.
those lines.
But I can't think of any other way you would do it. Like any other way you could hide something that's not exposed to the elements that you have to check every nook and cranny for. But I'm fascinated. For some reason, I'm fascinated by what does it actually look like out there
What if
sitting underground?
what if he peppered the different things, because there's multiple items within a hunt, but are they all in one box? Or because the fake person that was he was getting trashed on Reddit, but he was saying he found the past and present, I think, in North Carolina, and most think it's in California, so they were really getting on him about that. But he was saying I found item 1 here, I found item 2 there, but item 2 had the clue, and I left item. So he was all over the place, but he was saying basically one of these 3 items, which one of them he said he took, the second one he left, but when he came back, it was tampered with and the contents were missing, which could be the clues to the main hunt. So he was all over the place. But what do you think about that concept that it could be kind of sprinkled around the area and you're finding one by one?
It's entirely possible, but I think he's all about the big eureka. He wants to have that big emotion when you just found it and you found the whole thing. That seems more his style to me than finding like a few things at a time.
Well, if the next person, if someone hears this and they have an interview coming up with him, or if John, you come on here, we'd love to have you on here. But let us know or ask him, are all these contents within one box, or were these boxes kind of separated and divided?
It'll be great to know. So
Hmm.
I have a game for everyone, for you two tonight that I wanted to play. And the game is called Buy and Sell Starter Pack. So I'm going to go through it. It sounds like a riddle in itself. So a starter pack is what I'm calling is if someone has started to think of a way in which they could solve one of these hunts. Like say, for example, the word search. They've got an idea of how to solve it or where to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the idea, and what I would like you two to do is to buy or sell it, which means if you're buying it, it means you like the idea. It's something that you might look into. You think, oh yeah, that could be it. If you're selling the idea, it means you hate the idea. You don't like this clue. You don't like this approach to solving it, and you wouldn't even bother looking into it. Does that make sense?
Let's do it.
Ready. Love a challenge.
Okay, so
Can I?
first one, I'll call the what 3 words clue. So someone found, and I've heard of this before, that there's this website called what3words.com. Okay, and the idea is that 3 words identifies an area anywhere in the world, it's a specific place in the world. I think it's like within a few yards squared. Like it's pretty specific. So, for example, give you an example of this. So, New York City Hall, the 3 words that describe that is clip, apples, leap. Now, it's not describing it anyway, they're random words, but with those 3 words, clip, apples, leaf, it pinpoints somewhere on the map and it pinpoints New York's City Hall. So the idea is if you find 3 words in the riddles or in the book and you put them together, you can get a location somewhere in the US. Are you buying or selling that idea?
I'm selling it. I'm not into the word games. I'm more of a math person. So I think that there's like anagram solutions in there. I think that there's all kinds of things that could go into it. And I would just go down so many rabbit holes just trying to figure out every little detail of how those words are related.
Yeah, same here. I was gonna say this is a sell because there's so many haystacks already, and this is just taking a needle from each haystack, and it's too random for me.
Too many like tree structure, too many rabbit holes to go down, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
too
I've
many
got another
Yeah,
one.
I got to protect me from myself.
That makes sense. Okay, so apparently there's the ISBN number for books. So there's a unique identifier for books. So for example, Ready Player One, the book that's referred to in John Collins's book, as a number. It's like a 12-digit number, 978009956, etc. So if you could find that number in the book, it might direct you to a particular book, or if he's referring to a book, that number might give you a clue to lead somewhere else. You buying or selling that idea?
So let me make sure I understand it. Somewhere in the treasure inside is a number that would lead to a different book.
Well, either way. So if he's referring to Ready Player One, that Ready Player One book has a specific number. Maybe the number leads you somewhere else as well.
I mean, if I had to, I'd probably rent the idea. I wouldn't buy it. But if I can't rent it, if it's not available for lease, I'd probably sell it. The reason I'd rent it, I'd look into it, right? I'll rent it. Why? If it's a good movie, I might buy it, but most likely it's just a rabbit hole. I think it's too easy. I'll put it that way.
Try before you buy. Every Amazon got everybody hooked.
Okay, well that makes sense. Okay, two more. Okay, so One of the people noticed that he uses the word weave a lot, like James Halliday in Ready Player One weaves the story. So there's a particular type of cipher called, I think it might be called a weave pattern or a checkerboard. So it's kind of like every second word is blocked and every second word is shown. And so could you put a weave on top of, say, the word search and determine clues from that? Buying or selling that?
I'm buying it. I have a weave theory for the Appalachian footpath box.
Oh, we just
That
gave it away.
that is not going to be enough information for somebody to figure it out. Absolutely not. Yeah, I have a weave theory, and that's what I will say.
I
Max, you
think I,
buying or
I
selling
think
that?
I think I'll buy that. It's something good to have just in your Swiss Army knife. You never know. As long as you're not limited to one weave, just the concept of it, it could be, like the title of each chapter could be a weave, right? So yeah, I'll definitely buy that.
And the last one, I realized most of these are related to the word search. I think I was just looking at a lot of the word search. The last one is the O's on the word search are related to guitar chords. So in guitar chords is like a grid where there's O's to where to place your fingers, and each guitar chord is a letter representing that grid. Does that make sense? Would you buy or sell that idea?
I'm selling. I'm just having flashbacks of going to guitar centers, and that's the worst place in the world for a single female to be.
I like the concept. I don't think I would limit myself to guitar. So maybe if just in general the music instruments they have a certain language, maybe that could be a decoder as
Well,
long as
that
I'm
one was
not
my favorite
limited
because
to guitar.
that one was my favorite because that one was my idea, and I'm telling everyone about it. So
I thought
I
that a book number thing was too.
oh
Yeah.
no, that was not mine. No.
Okay. Okay.
But this happened, of course, when I'm trying to fall asleep, and I thought of that. And of course, I had to delay my sleep by going to my phone and looking it up and trying to look up the word search again and seeing if chords could fit onto it. Probably got an hour less sleep one night because I was thinking about that.
So you put some time. You bought this. How'd it go?
Didn't work out. But maybe maybe someone else could maybe I did it wrong. Maybe someone else could look into it better. Well, that pretty much should do it for this week. So management is a. Do you want to recap again how people want to contact you?
Yeah, so you can find me at themanagement.gumroad.com, and I've got lots of useful stuff on there for people who are getting into the treasure hunt. I'm a first-time treasure hunter, so I am just trying to document everything as I go through, so and share that with everybody. Today, I actually just put together a YouTube specifically for people who are new to catch up on all the meanings of the different symbols in the Appalachian footpath map, and you can catch that on YouTube. It's at the management, but it's abbreviated. BMGNTAT is the YouTube handle.
That sounds great. I'm gonna have to check that out. So for everyone this week, enjoy your hunting. Don't get too stressed out. Relax. Don't get all burnt out. It's gonna take a long time to find this treasure. So take your time and have a great week hunting. We'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone. Have a happy and safe New Year's.
Happy, happy, joy, joy.